So David Abraham is a professor of applied mathematics here in the Department of Applied Mathematics and Theoretical Physics, so-called DAPT. He was until 2021, the boss of this building. So he was the director of the I9 until 2021. Like his fellow speakers, he's held lots of positions on committees and all these things.
I'm glad you put in the context that I was director here. So I had lots to do. One of the main thing was sort of running this place administratively, keeping my research going. But I'm not really a communicator as you would recognize it, although I want to make a general point about communication. So I'm really better trained on how not to communicate maths rather than how to communicate maths. So, mass communication, if you think of yourself as a professional, is that you have a big part of your job talking to one sector of the community outside of our academic discipline. So it's a bit odd that I was asked to do this, and Chris and Alad have done a great job of talking about their particular sector, what they're interested in. But the brief that I was given from Marianne was talk about your experiences and ideas about helping to turn maths into a more prominent part of the cultural and political landscape. I'm ill-equipped to do that. Your experience is setting up the academy, there's the Academy for Mathematical Science, and creating avenues of knowledge exchange, in particular the Knowledge Exchange Hub for Mathematical Sciences, which Chris mentioned, and your appeal to mathematicians, not my personal appeal, but my appeal to you to become part of current debates. Okay, so my response to that, so of course I said yes, because I like to talk about stuff, even if I don't know about it, and because I make lots of mistakes, and I want to talk about sort of how to avoid those mistakes or building on those mistakes in a positive way. So I'll make some general communication stuff. So I'm going off-piste a little bit. A few reflections and some personal gaffes. I'll open up to what I do and how embarrassing it has been. And then my experience in talking to business, industry and government, really, and avenues of knowledge exchange, how we got to where we are today, which I think many of us are proud of, and how we see that as part of the communications issue and the cultural political debates. And in particular, I end with some sort of a pleading for how and why you and everyone you know should get involved. We can all input into sort of big issues in a way which perhaps we didn't think we were able to. And certainly if someone had told me at the start of my career I could make a contribution, I would have been shocked at that idea. So I love this way of two-way flow of information. That's so important. So we all call what we do when we talk to industry and others as knowledge exchange, because exchange is about exchange. I give you something, you give me something. It's not one way. And I've always believed very strongly that that's the value of talking to industry. So working in an area of public interest, to me, there's two things for me personally in my career. One is industrial engagement, which we now call knowledge exchange in a much broader sense. And that's for my own personal research. I love talking to people outside academia, seeing how they see the world, what their view is, what the value is of what I do, what it isn't. And then the other part is for doing industrial engagement in a broader sense for the whole mathematical community, how we can all engage. And then lobbying, loosely interpreted. So lobbying means like talking to anyone and saying, yeah, this is a brilliant idea. And engagement with decision makers to improve the lot of mathematical sciences. So it's both, we think mathematical sciences is fantastic and we want to strengthen our discipline, but our discipline needs strengthening because it's so valuable to the rest of the world. So it's that two-way exchange, of giving value to other people, advice, policy, decision-making, proper, sensible knowledge base to what we do, as well as helping support us as a community and making us stronger. So, talking from experience, that was the first bit of my title. Always try to speak from a position of knowledge and expertise. So that's my first mistake. I'm very happy to talk about something I know nothing about, as my wife is always telling me. So we're all in the communication business, so that's why I'm talking, because I'm not a communicator to large groups of school kids on a regular basis, but I do, everything is about communication. And I now ask myself, why am I doing this task? What's my message? What do I want to get out of it? I didn't ask those questions in the past. Try not to wing it or bullshit. Try and be honest and be prepared. And preparation, I'm sure Hannah knows, absolutely know your audience and their foibles. So what rings their bell, what doesn't ring their bell, float their boat. And try to align your aims and objectives, their aims and objectives with yours. So if you're both going to be happy from this exchange, that's positive. And that was a huge mistake I've always made. I know what mine are, and I don't bother to ask many people what theirs are. And not everyone shares the same passions as you. So what I find is incredibly important, valuable, other people find irrelevant and dull. So that's been a problem in knowledge exchange with industry quite often. And the last point, which is what Marianne said to think about, was this social responsibility. You have a hierarchy of personal and social responsibilities and whatever role you take on. So remember that. And then the second sort of way of interpreting that meaning is I'm talking from experience about how not to communicate maths. So self-deprecation has its time and place. I do it now, say I'm not very good, but sometimes it's bad to say that, admit that, as I'll show you one example in a minute. And one thing, again, I always do is talk to an audience, and I think about the audience as being X. And really, not homogeneous, the audience. There's many different strands of thought and opinion. So really think about how to broaden your appeal in what you're saying or your relevance, and try to speak their language or temper your mathematics to make your approach comprehensible and accessible. And that, I'm sure Chris would say, is a really big deal when talking to industry. Get the mathematics and the input right. Some people, they want the technical information. They want you to prove your credentials, and others don't want that at all. They don't understand it. It's a means to an end, and you'll kill the engagement if you do that. So listen to your audience and respond to cues and feedback, and don't patronize or talk down to the audience, which I'm probably doing now. So I'm not going to take it. This is the first example, which I think is brilliant, about getting the tone, the message and the content right. This is a family member lives next door to a chip shop in West Country. And this is what they get on TripAdvisor, the reviews. This is typical. Look at the bottom one about the chips that they sell at the fish and chip shop. Awful, awful, awful. Owner is absolutely revolting. Nasty, nasty person. Food is disgusting, well overpriced and dripping in oil. So you'd think that would die, that chip shop, but it's sort of gained appeal because it's so awful. People want to go and be abused by this person. And the other one is a longer version of the same thing. There's loads on there, but they have a reputation. So sometimes being so bad that you're good. But generally you want to avoid that. Try and get your message. If your chips are rubbish, make them better. Okay. And this is one, a very good friend, colleague mine, worked for the Krypton Factors. Some of you are old enough to remember the Krypton Factor. Do any of you remember? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it was a game show looking for individuals to become the super person of the year. And it ran for a long time, 254 episodes. And my colleague at Manchester University, he designed puzzles and questions for the sort of quick fire rounds, etc. And he often made the puzzles too hard, and then it got weaned out in the interview, in the recording stage, and they would redo things, take bricks away and stuff. So if you look back, I'm sure you can find some, you'll see that it was, it all looked smooth, but then one thing slipped through a quickfire question which started like this: an inextensible string of zero mass and finite extent, blah, blah. So what he'd done in some blind moment when he was writing exam questions for undergraduate paper, he put that, a mechanics question into it, got the tone completely wrong. The producers didn't spot it, but he was mortified about having done that. Getting the message right, signalling is so important. And so here's some personal moments of hell. The very first lecturing job I got, I was told to come in on the Friday before the term started, and I was told what I was going to do. And I turned up and they said, you're going to teach electromagnetism to undergraduates, maths and physics students. I'd never done electromagnetics as an undergraduate or a postgraduate. I knew nothing about it, and I said yes, and I did it. And I struggled through, and some people passed so it must have not completely failed. But of course, now I know that I would have asked well in advance, am I going to be expected to lecture this term? What should I do? What subjects? And push back. But I didn't. And then the second one is terrible. I went to a conference many years, 20-odd years ago, on engineering and how they were getting weaker and weaker students in mathematical sciences, so their A-level results were hopeless. What can they do about it? I went to this conference, 300 of the top engineers, and then me, and we had working discussions in the morning, and I said all this thing about mathematics, how important, da, da, da. And then I went out from there. After the breakout sessions, it went to a sort of general discussion session. I immediately forgot all about what we were talking about, went off and had a cup of tea. And then I went into the discussion session. As I went in there, the chair of the session said, oh, yes, I was just talking about that important point you made, Professor Abrahams. Would you like to come up and talk about it? I had not a clue what I had said. So I just winged it and I just died a death. Now I would have said, could you remind me what was that important point I made? But I didn't. Oh, okay. And so, and that last point is I lost an industry contract through this mathematician's diffidence. We had the deal agreed, we knew what we were doing with the sort of techie guys, went to the CTO to talk about the thing and get it signed off. And I said, well, we're not sure if we're going to be able to solve it. It's a hard problem. And, you know, that's why we're only asking for 30K instead of, you know, £500,000. Killed it straight away. So they want certainty and they want mathematicians being able to do stuff. So again, you have to think carefully about the audience and when you have to lose your diffidence, etc. So I believe everyone can engage in activity which could lead to external impact, innovation. Everyone from the academic community. We can talk to businesses, charities, whoever, but we have a role to play in thinking about what we do, how we offer it. But KE can be daunting, intimidating, but exhilarating, hugely rewarding, absolutely rewarding, both in terms of sort of feeling you've made a difference, but also informing your own research. It really is a two-way flow. Language, as I said, and cultural issues can be difficult. You need to find the right vehicle for engagement, so experience tells you how best to do this. So think about who you're talking to and what, you know, engagement with industry is at all levels, and industry is very broadly interpreted. So you've got the techie staff within, you know, industry, Giles in Unilever. You could talk to him about maths and science, and that would be great, but you wouldn't talk to typically the chief technical officer or the CTO or the chief finance officer or the chief executive officer about the math stuff. You'd leave that. And then heads of government departments or their minions, you have to pitch it at the right level. So you wouldn't say to a CEO this. You would have to mediate. What about to some government minister? I mean, with Giles, I could imagine saying that to you. And a chief finance officer, you certainly don't want to say that. But you want to say it in a forceful way that not quite as as overt as that. But that's what we want to do it. Okay, so we have to pitch it. There's some unique engagement problems in knowledge exchange. So Chris and others around the room will know all about them. Other people in industry are smart, as high standing. We have something amazing that we do. It's the language of science, but it's unclear for many people in industry, again, industry business, what it is that we can actually do for them. So that initial engagement can be very tricky. So how you start it off and make them realize that we are worth talking to is difficult. And then we have this reputation of being cheap. So they always want us to give us a contract which is not costing very much money. We need to change that. So access route to mathematical expertise has been unclear in the past. So we need to do a better job. And that's what the K Hub for Mathematical Sciences is about, is making it clear to the outside world where to go if they want some maths input, and then the K Hub can try and sell our subject to make sure that we allow people to think, well, maybe it is worth having a little chat with the mathematicians. So we've had brilliant work of the Gateway and ICMS in doing this, but we need a bigger self-organisation, and that's what the K Hub has offered us. Clear front door, but long-term mechanisms for engagements. So I'd just like to say that I think this is important. We needed the K Hub 50 years ago, but brilliant ideas don't translate into reality, so it has to find its time. They need the right set of circumstances, good people with passion, the right ability, skill set of those people, and domain knowledge to pull it off. So the K Hub is one such example of a brilliant idea which had its time and had the people to do it. And the K Hub is now amazing, and it will need to have a big input from lots of people for it to keep going. 65 university departments involved, 62 knowledge exchange champions, plus the super champions, KE professionals, academics, 100 special partners, but loads of other big partners, business, industry and government departments. And then onto the Academy of Mathematical Sciences. Many of us have felt that we've been too fractured as a community, and I've always felt that. So one of the things I really was passionate about is we have a wonderful community, but we spend all our time in our learned society silos, being comfortable and thinking about issues about our own discipline, and not thinking enough about our advocacy and lobbying roles. So we need to be responsible. And we need to be at the top table, that third bullet point, for policy discussions on many, many aspects of modern society. So we heard a couple of examples today where we, as mathematical scientists, should be there giving the input. And until the academy idea came along, we were sort of floundering a bit. We'd had LMS and IMA merger talks, which ended in failure, but only just. And we've had a sticking plaster solution, but now we have a new entity, the Academy. It had the right opportunities at the right time with the right sets of people driving it forward. So that last point, unity, shared purpose and set of ideals, we can sort of do things that we couldn't do individually. So just last couple of slides, what have I learned? Find out what you can do. Think about what you do. Each of us have unique things to offer. I didn't really realize that. I only later in the day that I felt I could facilitate things. I could support things. Even though they weren't in my skill set, I knew how to make the bridge between people to allow that to happen. Try to have a long-term strategy. Think about, where am I going? You know, I've got this brilliant job, I've got this fellowship. Why am I doing it? What am I doing it for? What do I want? And think morally, so that the penultimate point here, what would others see as your positive legacy? Not yours, but what would other people see? It's very sobering when you think about it. And then the other moral point, you're part of a world maths community. We have a responsibility to each other because we believe it's brilliant and we need to make it better. So we need to work, commit time. And I've always felt it's good to work on things which I know are ultimately doomed, but fritter away your time. Don't feel that you're wasting your time. Talk about ideas which doomed to fail. So think sort of big. So, and finally, collaborate. I've said that a few times. Take advantage of opportunities where they come along and do take chances. Risk it. I never have done enough risk taking. Okay. So this is something that a person said to me recently. Yeah, make a fool of yourself. Do things, but if it makes a difference, great. Know when others will be better in a role than you. So facilitation is good. I can't do this, someone wants me to do it, but I know someone better at it, then do it. Okay, and then stay optimistic. So I have always been an optimist. So to bastardize a phrase, we do this stuff not because it's easy, but because we thought it would be easy. Thank you.